An entire video about wrist curls. Yes, an entire video about wrist curls. Forearms are important, but they get put on the back burner very easily. Wrist curls are often seen as like a dinky exercise. It's hard to get excited about something like wrist curls after you just killed yourself breaking every blood vessel in your face trying to eke out that max deadlift attempt. But forearms contribute to aesthetics. They make the totality of your arm stronger. They increase your grip. And it's even the case that stronger grips correlate with living longer. So whether you're an arm wrestler or you're just interested in having your lower arm look like a Renaissance fair turkey leg, we're gonna cover the granddaddy of forearm building exercises, the wrist curl. But first, a word from our sponsor. It is, of course, Base Strength AI. Some people struggle with the complexity of programming, and you know what it is. When you're on the warpath, you're growing, getting stronger, and you hit that brick wall out of nowhere, it puts you into like an emotionally reactive state. You're not making good decisions. You're angry, you're frustrated, you're disillusioned. Should I ditch this hobby and go back to building miniatures? No, you shouldn't do that. You should keep doing what you're doing. You just need something to keep you honest, and that's why we made Base Strength AI. Not only does it use my templates, which are pretty damn good by themselves, but it takes your input from an onboarding questionnaire to figure out your preferred style of lifting, your weaknesses, your training history to set your personalized training program, and it updates not just month to month, not just day to day, but second by second. It is the angel on your shoulder making sure that you are making good decisions. This is a level of personalization that you can't find anywhere else, and it's 1/10 of the price.
1/10 of the price?
Yes, 1/10 of the price. So get yourself unstuck, give yourself permission to get strong this year and hit those numbers you know you're capable of hitting. Hit the link below, go to basestrength.com to check out Base Strength AI. Now, it seems like there's not a lot of variation you could do to this, but there actually is quite a bit, and it can have big implications for how your training goes off. The first thing to consider is freedom of motion. You can do 2 arm versions that are very stable, where both hands are anchored by the barbell, and that allows you to focus more on pure neurological adaptation. Force production is a limiting factor here rather than balance or coordination. If you go with a single arm version, now the weight can move around a bit more. That can be an asset if you're really trying to emphasize the stretch, or if you're trying to turn or twist. That can be a benefit if that's what you're going for. However, your ability to handle shear load is going to be limited, so it is a bit less strength specific. Now, arm wrestlers specifically are going to like single arm versions because it does allow them to mimic the type of wrist maneuvers they're going to be doing while they're on the table. They have to really worry about pronation and supination and trying to control the other person's hand. So by throwing a fat grip on a dumbbell and practicing those movements, they get a little something extra out of the wrist curls. Now, a way to kick this up a notch is to do a 1-arm barbell variation. Now, this, of course, is going to be a difficult exercise, but the unruliness of it is going to be more of a feature than your ability to actually curl up. So yeah, you're gonna get a stress on the muscles of your forearms. However, there's a lot of supination and pronation that has to go on to combat the barbell as it goes back and forth. So it is very specific to arm wrestling in that way. For those of you that are not arm wrestling hopefuls, this might be a little too awkward, a little too complicated. You might be better off doing something that just targets the meat of your forearm more than anything. Hey, some of you are motivated by this stuff. If you want to be the guy that goes to Gold's Gym at 5 p.m. on a Monday during peak bench press hours and takes up one of the 3 bench racks so you can sit on the end and do a 1-arm barbell wrist curl with an empty barbell, go ahead. By the time you get that sucker up to 135, not only are you gonna have big damn forearms, but people will probably stop asking you to give up the bench. Now, for freedom of motion, I also really like this landmine variation because it's a mixed bag. You do get the freedom to turn and twist a little bit, but because it is anchored on one end, it is a bit more stable. So actual force production is probably gonna be a little bit higher than a true free weight. Now, we're splitting hairs here. I really think the benefit of all of this is variation for the sake of it. So if you like rotating movements in, if you can take each one as seriously and put comparable amounts of effort and continuously progress over time, there's no reason why you can't have a grab bag of similar exercises to keep things fresh. I think most people do tend to benefit more when they have one thing to fixate on that they're really excited to start chasing numbers. But this just gives a little bit of insight into the different reasons somebody might pick one over another. Now, past freedom of motion, we got to worry about range of motion. Now, this gets to do hypertrophy versus strength territory. Most people with smaller forearms should probably emphasize range of motion first because you want to build up a bigger forearm faster. That's going to be the quickest route to get strength, and you should have some meat to work with before you start doing low rep stuff that focuses on neurological adaptations. While extending your wrist does stretch the forearm muscles, it doesn't do so as much as when your hand is open. So getting the weight in your fingertips, that really kills your leverage. So the forearm muscles have to work very, very hard when they're in a stretch position. And we know that that's really good for hypertrophy. And you're going to feel that because the metabolic stress, just the burn you're going to get, is going to be absolutely insane. You're going to look like you're suffering kidney failure, like you have edema of the forearm, because all of the fluid that's pumped into those muscles, it's going to make it impossible to type your angry responses to this video. Now, I also really like this technique, which apparently was taken from Chuck Sipes, and that is to use a single arm version, but to use a kettlebell. Now, the reason this is clutch is because a wrist curl, just like any other free weight movement, tends to get easier as you move the weight up, as you get more full contraction. You can think about the top end of a bench press, a shoulder press, a tricep extension, a squat. They all tend to get easier towards the top. So one of the ways that you can keep tension more even throughout the entire movement is to have the weight be displaced further away from you. So you take that short moment arm that gives you the leverage advantage and you ruin it. You just move the center of mass further out. So by holding a kettlebell, that's exactly what you're doing. So those last couple of inches where typically you have an advantage, that goes away. So you're getting a much more thorough, more even stimulus, and that can be really good for hypertrophy. The best analogy is to think about just curling exercises. If you're standing up and your arm is hanging vertically down, it is very easy at the bottom where the bicep is stretched. As you curl up, it gets harder and then it gets easy again. However, if you change the angle and you do something like a preacher curl, now there's more even tension the entire time. And if you bring the arm all the way up where it's out in front of you, the greatest amount of tension is also where the bicep is stretched the most. But then every inch you move the bar, it's getting easier and easier and easier until you're at the top and there's essentially no tension. Similarly, having your wrists out in front of you, you're going to get the most tension at the bottom. It's going to be very easy at the top. Going standing like a behind the back wrist curl, you're going to have no tension on the stretch. It's all going to be at the top when it's the most contracted. Now you can go kind of in between and do what Levon and Devin Lorad are doing here. They're getting in this very strong like power position, so their forearm is supported by their body, but it's also sticking out at an angle. And whether it's intentional or not, this actually makes a big difference with how the forearm muscles experience the tension, because just like with a preacher curl, you're getting more even distribution of the weight throughout the entire range of motion. It's not so lopsided as when your arm is straight down or straight out in front of you. Now last, we have max power and strength. Now, as far as range of motion goes, that really only dictates where you're going to get strong. So if you're always doing full ranges of motion, that means you're going to be limited by the weight you can handle in that full range of motion. So it's really going to emphasize strength in the weakest position. However, the strongest position, and that's what arm wrestlers really concern themselves with, is going to be where the wrist is neutral or where the wrist is cocked in. And through that limited range, you build strength by handling as much weight as you can where you're not limited by anything else like range or tempo or opening the hands up. Now you notice what Levon is doing. You notice what Devin Lorad is doing. They're going through a very limited range of motion in their strongest position, and that allows them to handle absurd weight. But it's more about demonstrating some amount of control, some amount of resilience in their strongest position than it is about specific range of motion. That doesn't mean they're not clocking volume. That doesn't mean there's not effort. It just means moving the weight through a wide range isn't the point here. It's just like an isometric. It's like getting very comfortable holding a yoke. I think there's plenty of reason to believe that getting your forearms stronger by doing this, in addition to their hypertrophy work, is probably going to be a net benefit. However, if you are just doing this for aesthetic reasons, you do really want the ridiculous Popeye forearms, then this is probably something you can skip or at the very least deprioritize. Now, because weight and overload is our primary concern here and range of motion is so limited, the best thing that you're going to find is where you're the most secure, where you're in your strongest position, where it's easy to get in position, and it's easy to apply just a shit ton of effort without having to deal with other instability. Now, it's going to be a two-handed version where you're stable and on a bench. You're only going to be able to exert maximal force production in a wrist curl when you're in a position like this. So setting up the pins makes it easy to get into position. Good luck trying to get in position when you're using like 200 pounds on a two-hand wrist curl. It's going to be a massive pain in the ass. Probably need people to hand it to you. Just setting up the pins, it allows reproducibility. You know where the starting point is every single time, and you can focus on getting a minimum amount of distance that demonstrates that, hey, my forearms are in fact getting stronger. Now, the next step up would be if you know any weirdo arm wrestlers who stock their garage with a bunch of really niche, obscure arm wrestling type machines. They have wrist flexion machines that'll really allow you to load the weight up. These are fun. I'm sure they're productive as hell. but they take up a lot of space. You're not likely to find one, so learning how to modify the free weight movements, probably your best bet. Now, I think it's a mistake for anybody to overthink the progression, the sets, the reps, anything else. Take your favorite progression, plug it into this. As long as you are adding weight, adding volume, keeping effort high, aiming to do better, you're going to get gains. You just will. I don't think it's worthwhile trying to consider, well, is the forearm more built for endurance? Does it respond to high reps? Does it respond to low reps? If you're doing wrist curls to a standardized technique and your weight is going up in the context of that technique, along with your ability to handle volume and to exert effort, they're going to grow. It's that simple, guys. So get to it. Your journey to have your forearm look like a calf on a scooter at Walmart starts right now. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Hit the link below to check out Base Strength AI at basestrength.com and support the channel by supporting those who support us. Get your Bromley merch, Big Dreams, Bad Jeans tee at barbellapparel.com. And hey, check out our Discord while you're at it. Until next time, this is Bromley. I'll see you.